Well, welcome to this conversation that we are having at the intersection of faith and HIV. We are super excited to have all of you in this space and to have those of you who are listening to us, who are watching, who are waiting for the Q&A so that your voices can so that you can lend your voice to the conversation. I really think that it is an important conversation for us to have, and I'm super excited that all of you have said yes to this invitation to have this conversation. So I want us to get just a little bit of context around why it's important for us to have the conversation. The Trump administration, so the previous administration, I got a lot going on. I don't know if y'all can hear all of this. The previous administration, presidential administration, had an initiative to reduce the number of HIV infections over 10 years. And one of the ways to do that was to have a reduction in the amount of new infections by 75% in the year 2025. And then for those numbers to be reduced by 90% in the year 2030. And there were 4 pillars that they offered for us to think about in ways to accomplish that goal: to diagnose, to treat, to prevent, and to respond. And so many people, well, I thought it would be important for us to have the conversation because I think that there are many people who are unaware, first of all, that this was even a thing with the previous administration. I don't even know if people are aware that this is something that was actually happening, something that was actually implemented so that we can end the epidemic of HIV. And so if some people don't know that, they also don't know that Arkansas is one of the 7 states that was listed in the plan as a place, an area of focus to do this work. And then when we begin to talk about what is it that's keeping us from having this conversation, because we live in the South, in Arkansas, and we consider it to be part of the Bible Belt, one of the barriers that we have to conversation is people of faith being willing to talk about this in an open and honest and transformative way for people who are in their own congregations affected by faith leaders, people consider themselves to be faithful people who consider themselves to be members of the community who want to advocate and activate. I thought it would be great for us to have this conversation to talk about what is it that we can do to help educate people on the issue, to remove some of the barriers, and then to move forward in making sure that we are putting our best foot forward to educate, to end the epidemic of HIV. And so that is why we are gathered in this space to have conversation on tonight. And before we get started with the conversation, I just think it's only fair that we go through and hear from you who you are, your city, whatever it is. If you want to say that you represent an organization, that is fine. But we also want to know what your favorite flavor of ice cream is. So if we could go around and we're going to say your name, say where you're from. If it's an organization, you just want to say your city, whatever you want to share, and then your favorite flavor of ice cream. And we'll go around based on who I have in my on my computer. And Danny, that puts you up first.
Well, my name's Danny Harris. I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm with Engaging Arkansas Communities, and I guess it's a tie for my favorite ice creams. I love vanilla and I love cookies and cream. So that's my 2 favorites.
Thank you, Danny. I can't cookies and cream. I haven't been able to get into it, but I will not yuck your yum. I will not. Ellen, you are next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Ellen Alston. I live in Conway. I serve as chaplain at Hendrix College. I'm not here officially with Hendrix College, but I'm here because Denise invited me to come, and I wanted to be a part of the conversation, mainly to listen, which I think faith communities need to be doing more of anyway. And oh my goodness, first flavor that comes to mind ice cream wise is chocolate mint.
Chocolate mint. Mm-hmm. Peppermint with my ice cream. I'm gonna have to think about that. Okay, Reverend Ryan Davis, you're next on my screen.
I almost said good morning, but good evening, everybody. Glad to be with this distinguished assembly. Ryan Davis, co-founder of the Little Rock Freedom Fund, coordinator for the Michael Fellows program. And like Reverend Austin, I'm also mostly here to listen because, what I've seen as far as, in my context, of course, is the Black church, about the response to the HIV/AIDS epidemic has been it's been really poor, and I'll say that, and that's charitable, I think. But I know we're gonna get into that. My favorite ice cream is I know it shouldn't be this hard, but there's so many ice creams, and I love them all so well. But butter pecan.
Butter pecan. Yeah. Okay, next on my screen is Harold. Hey, Harold.
Hey, Denise. I'm Harold Hughes. I am a lay member of Quapaw Quarter United Methodist Church here in Little Rock. We have been working serving the LGBTQ community for many years. And of course, I've been involved. Lord, is there anybody on this screen that I haven't worked with at some point? So I just actually met Ellen face to face, and she's the Methodist in the bunch. Okay.
So, hey, I'm Methodist.
Huh?
I'm Methodist. Ryan is Methodist.
United Methodist.
Ryan is CME. Aren't you CME, Ryan?
Yeah. CME works. It's Lent. We but you really shouldn't be asking us diabetical folks about ice cream.
We won't tell anybody that you're eating it.
Okay. Cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. Got 2 for cookies and cream. Mm-hmm. Sanjay, hey, tell us about who you are, who you represent, and your favorite flavor of ice cream.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Sanjay Johnson. I'm here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I really don't represent anyone. Well, I can say that I am under Cornelius Madden's leadership with Arkansas Raps on on the chair regarding that. But my favorite ice cream would have to be cookie dough.
Cookie dough, chocolate chip cookie dough. Okay. Next on my
chip, just cookie dough.
Oh, just cookie dough. Got chocolate chips in it? Mm. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, Cornelius, you're next on my screen.
Thanks, Denise. Hi, I'm Cornelius Mabin Jr. I am now being termed as the visionary for the Starlight Foundation Arkansas Raps here in Little Rock. I guess my favorite ice cream would have to be Haagen-Dazs chocolate. And there's a reason why, because I worked at a Haagen-Dazs and I ate a lot of Haagen-Dazs chocolate.
I was going to ask you why it had to be Haagen-Dazs. Why can't it just be chocolate?
No, it has to be Haagen-Dazs.
It has to be Haagen-Dazs.
That's right. Okay, I'm brand loyal.
Next on my screen is Kevin.
Hi, my name is Kevin Holmes, and I'm here as a community advocate. I've worked numerous years in the community, but I worked at the state level, nonprofit, and everywhere in between. But my favorite ice cream is actually mint chocolate chip. So,
is that the same as you, Ellen? Yeah. So we got 2 cookies and cream, 2 mint chocolate chip. Does that mean, is it green? Is the ice cream green if it has mint in it? The color is green? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. Okay. So next on my screen is Tony.
Hi, I'm Tony Orr. I feel like I'm here representing those who are misinformed or those who don't know in the community. And my favorite, I don't know if you consider ice cream, I consider ice cream is rainbow sherbet.
Okay. Okay. We'll take this ice cream section. So we'll take that. Okay. Next on my screen is Deidre. I think you're on mute, Deidre.
Hi, I'm Deidre. I am in Little Rock. I work out of Conway, and my favorite ice cream is a tie between Blue Bunny, Dutch chocolate, and butter pecan.
Wait, now you had how many?
What? It's two. It
That's
was
just
two.
two.
It's a tie. I don't know which one. Either one comes, I'm good.
Okay. And so what I'm gonna do, I don't think that they're gonna allow me to. So if I could just remove somebody for just a minute, I'm gonna bring you right back on. Because this has not upgraded to allow me to get 15 people in the room like it promised. But I want to just take a moment to allow us to hear from Daniel, and I will bring you right back on screen in just 1 minute.
You could take me off and bring me back.
Okay. All right. So, Daniel, hey, Daniel, we are in
Hi,
this
everyone.
conversation and we are introducing ourselves, telling what city we represent or organization, whatever it is you want to share about yourself, and also telling us your favorite flavor of ice cream.
Okay. My name is Daniel Liddell Collier. Um, uh, I am part of the community and an advocate for the community. Um, I like sherbet too. Strawberry, not strawberry. That rainbow sherbet that Brother Orr was talking about.
Okay.
For
So, we
sure.
got two mint chocolate chips, two cookies and cream, and two rainbow sherbets. Okay. Okay. Daniel, could you hear us while you were before you came on camera? Could you hear us talking?
Yes, I could.
Okay. Well, I'm going to remove you in just a minute so that I can hear from Princess, and we'll keep going.
Understood.
Okay. Thank you. So let me get Princess here. Princess,
Hi.
we are telling people who we are, who we represent, whatever information you want to share, and then we are telling our favorite flavor of ice cream.
All right. My name's Princess Krishna Kali. I'm a trans woman in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm also an armchair theologian with aspirations to the ministry. And my favorite flavors of ice cream be a tie between mint chocolate chip and cookies and cream.
Mint chocolate. Okay, so I was wondering if somebody was going to break the tie, and it looks like mint chocolate chip has mint chocolate chip has won, because I wasn't going to say, because I am Denise Donnell with Just Talk Consulting. My favorite flavor of ice cream isn't mint chocolate chip, but it is green. It is pistachio almond. And no one said that, but that is my favorite. And so I wonder if Daniel could hear me when I was not on screen, I wonder if I'm the one who can go off screen and put the rest of you on so that you can all be present, but you should still be able to hear me. So let's see how that works. If I remove myself and then you all tell me whether or not you can still.
We see Daniel. We don't hear you.
So I have to be now. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so
Now
I'll
we
have to
can.
be in conversation. Yes, I'll have to be a part. I'll have to be on the screen in order for you all to hear me. But those who are not on screen, because isn't this a wonderful problem to have? We got too many people for the
Too many.
room. That's what I'm talking about. Too many people from the room for the room. So I have my phone right here, and you all are sending me text messages. So those of you who are not visible, if you want to say something, just let me know, and I will make sure that you get on screen so that we can hear what you have to say. And I'm sorry that it did not update so that I could get 15 people in the room as it promised. But I wanted to take a moment to first of all ask. So, this is another question that I want everyone to answer. After this question, the questions that I pose are going to be conversational. So anyone who wants to have a comment after the question is asked, you can just feel free to dialogue with each other, and I will just move us through the conversation. But only this next question do I want everyone to answer. And from then on, it's just whoever wants to talk. Does that make sense? Everyone follow me? Okay. So this next question is, when I invited you into this space, I invited you for a reason. And I invited you for a reason based on the strength of the relationship that I have with you, what I know about you, what I know about the work that you are doing, what I know about our relationship, the vision and the goals that you've shared with me about your life and your work. So there's a reason that I chose you to be on this space, in this space. But there's also a reason you said yes. So the question is, and I think that's Daniel. If you could put your phone on mute, because I think I hear your clicker, because you're about to turn
Yes, ma'am.
somewhere. Yes. So if you put your phone on mute, and so the question really is, why is it that you think this is an important conversation to have at the intersection of faith and HIV? Whether you are a leader of faith, you consider yourself to be a faithful person, or you feel like there's some information that we need to get to faith communities. And so why do you think that this is an important enough conversation for you to say yes to being here? And so we're going to start with Daniel, because we're going to go in the opposite direction from the way that we started. So Daniel, we'll start with you.
Okay, I apologize for the clickers going off. I'm trying to navigate my way through Little Rock. Um, okay, so the first question was uh, why I felt like this was an important conversation to have.
Yes, that's the only
Correct.
question for you to answer.
Okay. Okay. So this is an important conversation to have because ignorance only helps exacerbate the problem. The more that we don't know about something, the more susceptible we are to keep repeating the same behaviors over and push it off into another generation. And so there also is a stigma that comes with people that either have HIV or people that think that they know people that have HIV. I've been on both sides. I've heard people make comments about not wanting to be in contact with a person with HIV, or some of the ignorant statements that they make about people that have HIV/AIDS. And they're just based out of just pure ignorance. Some people are ignorant because they want to remain ignorant, and some people are ignorant because they haven't been exposed to the information. The people that haven't been exposed to the information, those are the people that I think that we can reach.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
Deidre, why do you think this is an important conversation to have?
If we're being truthful, one of the reasons would be that the church probably still has a huge following. Okay, if we're just going by, if we look at it from the media aspect of it, it's still a huge following, but they also act the same way as the media. And if it's not of interest of the general pop or their congregation, they don't do it, or they don't educate. I have seen very few, and I'm talking nationwide, churches, denominations, however it's is structured, that will deal with HIV. Not in the beginning, and definitely not now.
Tony, why is this an important conversation for us to have?
I think it's important because just to listen to some of the previous comments is that um, there are a lot of people in the faith community that don't truly understand that because of miscommunication, traditions that were taught that there was something wrong, that you kind of isolate people, or you kind of look at it as that, when it came to HIV, that the quote unquote, they got what they deserve in certain ways. And a lot of that is because they don't know. And when you don't know, you're very harmful. You're a very harmful person. And the church can be very harmful to those who need the most help. And so I think it's a great conversation that you can learn. And as you learn, then you can take what you've learned, or I can take what I've learned and take it into those communities, take that into the church and give a whole different perspective, and give people a better understanding of what it is, not only to live with HIV, but also how do we meet the needs of those with HIV.
Princess, why do you think that this is an important conversation for us to have?
Well, one of the church's primary missions, to my way of thinking, is social justice and equity. And Jesus reached out to the sick, outcast, lepers, for example. The stigmatized and marginalized are part of the primary mission of the church, and we're part of uplifting them is not letting them be forgotten, not letting them slip through the cracks.
Harold, why do you think this is an important conversation to have?
Well, to follow what we have just heard, if you're in a Christian church, the guy that the church is all about was all about healing people, and not just physically, mentally as well. So the church is dropping the ball when they either ignore or condemn people for having a virus. Um, one of the things, there's so many things to be embarrassed about. Can I get an amen, United Methodist, the United Methodist Church? But one of the really good things that comes out of it is every year, the very first Sunday of December, we have a special offering Sunday for World HIV/AIDS Day. Now, the money that's raised there, very little actually, if any, actually goes here in the United States, but it does help raise awareness. And I usually try to use that as a springboard to get out some HIV/AIDS facts and that sort of thing, particularly with all the good news that we have going on with injectables at all. We need to let people know that it is no longer, number one, a gay disease, no, number two, a death sentence, all down the line.
Sanjay, why do you think that this is an important conversation for us to have?
Well, the reason this is a very important conversation, it can be used, partially maybe a step to, I would say, healing. For one, of course, got to talk to your therapist, a counselor, if you believe in the counseling part of the matter or the issues you may have. But also coming from a stigmatized environment, as far as a strict Pentecostal upbringing background. Of course, sex wasn't talked about in an educational matter, just far as be married to your man and wife, wait for marriage, the usual stuff we all hear basically in church. And, condoms are not talked about, all different types of STDs, and then, sexual, your sexuality is brought to the fact, mainly homosexuality, for one. Brought into, talked about in a, of course, demeaning manner, which we all know in most cases. And, and of course, in the negativity on sex, for those who engage in the same sex, has, a bad rep or demeaned, pretty much. And then, for those myself, grew up gay, I was in denial, anything of that matter. But I was fell through the cracks, me and my brother, for one, the education about sex for one, but also with me, sex is different from me as a same gender loving person. So the education I had to learn basically on my own. I wasn't catered to, as far as physical health, knowing that it is a responsibility, nor my mental health, which I was struggling with, as far as growing up gay. Anyway, but far as now, it's very important to have this conversation. Of course, speak about the facts, not foolishness, as communities may say. This is saying, get the facts and not the foolishness. But it's very important, to, of course, mention in the regards, the upgrade with medicine to prevent HIV, for one, and suppress it as well. That's highly important. And of course, basically, it's our language in today's time. It's very important. The language, especially when trying to change laws and change people mindsets, or help them change mindsets regarding education about HIV, especially in churches.
Cornelius, why is this an important conversation for us to have?
I believe because after 40 years, many of the issues and challenges and barriers continue to exist. As a person who's been living HIV for more than half of my life, which will be 30 years, I continue to see that we have new infections. I continue to see where there is inaction from our faith-based um, individuals due to perhaps we've heard ignorance this evening, or perhaps maybe complacency, or maybe it's not sexy enough to them. I think we need to have more conversations that are action oriented, where we are going to not just keep talking about it, but do something about it. And technically, we've tried to do that and take that stance through the organizations that I'm, kind of heading up. So we're willing to have the conversation, but we want to have some action with that conversation, and also hold some people accountable, because our state plan says that we want to be one of the first states to end HIV in the South. Is that going to really happen?
Is that going to really happen? Kevin, um,
I don't
why do
know.
you think the conversation is important to have?
So for me, somebody who grew up in a very Baptist church, very strict church regarding HIV and the LGBTQ community, I think those who are disproportionately affected by HIV still hold the church as a regard for a main resource. And the church has dropped the ball on providing that resource for those who are disproportionately affected. Like everybody else has said, if it's not something that is romanticized, right? So we can talk about adultery, we can talk about those things. And the weird thing about that is that people say amen because they've been through that. And so I feel like if you have not been directly affected by HIV, it doesn't really matter to you. And it doesn't really matter until it hits our front door. And that reactive state versus proactive is where the church needs to come into play.
Ryan, why do you think this is an important conversation to have?
I think it's important because the church at large has really, even in what they want to perceive as its best effort to predicate this conversation, beginning with the idea that, and I've seen this in statements in the denomination I grew up in. I've seen this presented on the floor of the denomination that I'm currently serving in, where by any statement of the denomination's posture around the HIV/AIDS epidemic begins with God created man and woman to so on and so. You understand what I'm saying? It's predicated on that. It begins with that, and like Mr. Maben said, it's been 40 years. It's a generation plus, and we're still stuck in the same. We're in a state of really dangerous stasis. And I said earlier, my context is the Black church, and so I want to say I'm not beating up on the Black church, but that's my context. I don't know any other context. And I grew up in the Church of God in Christ, the Pentecostal denomination, and its posture toward the HIV/AIDS epidemic is to extend the use of lots of funds to help children orphaned by AIDS in Africa, which is in and of itself an honorable thing, but it also speaks to a particular thing about that denomination I grew up in, the Grand Old Church, as they call it, that Mr. Maben said it very, very, it's sexy. It is absolutely, and I don't mean to dishonor, the goodness of that particular work, but it is sexy to provide for children orphaned by AIDS in Africa, and certainly more so than confronting it right on your doorstep.
Well, I would
And we're
say,
talking about when 53% of new cases in the state of Arkansas are Black people, and the Black church does not have a response. It's a social justice issue, and we don't hear that, unfortunately.
Hold on just a minute, Sanjay. Hold on just a minute. Let Ellen and Danny answer this question, and then we'll have the dialogue. Ellen, why is this an important conversation for us to have?
It's important for several reasons. And first of all, I'm just going to be honest and share that when Denise sent me a message and said, would you like to be a part of a conversation on how the church is responding to ending the epidemic. I read that as not aware of this initiative that was named Ending the Epidemic. I thought, oh, this is about how the church is responding to our saying the pandemic is over. And so my mind was going there, kind of operating that way. You know, how do we, until further conversation later this week, and I realized I was not aware. So I am embodying that perspective that is maybe clueless about this tool that is here, this initiative that is here, and if that can be helpful to us, we just need awareness and we need to know about that. Um, so awareness is one thing, and sometimes that's like a surprise. May not intend to be mean spirited about it, but just sort of sleeping. And how do we wake up to that? Um, and then education is important. How do we just know more about what's really going on, whether it's statistics, whether it's overall, whether it's trends? Um, I mean, I can remember when HIV didn't really have a name. I remember way back in the early years when this something emerged, and it was a really big deal. And now I can sense that it doesn't have as much a prominence in our conversation in the midst of everything else. So how do we be focused in and be educated? And then the third and last thing I'll say is a big reason. Um, Both Harold and Princess referred to Jesus' leadership model call. And I think one of the biggest, most transformative things that Jesus called for is for us all to continue to expand our relationships, because that is where we gain awareness and education that just goes really deep, and we can see and act and respond in different ways. Um, but of course, it first starts with listening, paying attention, and being willing to say, "Oh, I needed to know that." So that's why I'm here.
Danny, why do you think this is an important conversation for us to have?
Well, out of this whole group, Denise, you've probably heard me talk about this topic more than the rest of them in a faith-based setting. I often delve into that at New Beginnings in my opportunities to speak, but I'm going to take a personal approach to it here in the reason I feel. For all of my life, from the moment I was born on, church and faith were important to me. I was there at every worship service. I participated in things. I got the spiritual insights that I needed, the counsel that I needed, the fellowship that I needed. And for some reason, HIV took that away, and I don't know why. So for me, this conversation needs to occur because I want to have the things that I had about faith prior to HIV again.
That's interesting. As soon as Sanjay comes back, I want to make sure that he has an opportunity to engage Ryan in dialogue with something that you said, Ryan, that triggered something on the inside of Sanjay, and he wanted to have this conversation with you. So I want to give him an opportunity before I ask the next question. Sanjay, you wanted to respond to something Ryan said. Here's your chance to do that.
Yeah. It is regarding to, of course, the church I was talking about, or the denomination that I was raised in from Little Child, is the Church of God of Christ. So we have that in common. So I know the ins and outs with that. And I know that Cornelius mentioned about, like, as far as the appeal, as far as, it's not sexy or whatever. I would say regarding them, because again, that's my experience, or I would say my involvement as far as a moral concept, basically. So they'll help the children, but as far as adults or whatever, people are going to question, if they're going to take interest as far as like HIV testing or whatever. They're going to see an influx of course, Black people, but within that's broken down, Black men coming up. It's going to be questioned about, are they gay, are they bi, whatever. There's going to be question like, well, why are they helping them? Which shouldn't be a question why you're helping or assisting with testing. I mean, you want someone's health to be better. I will hope so. But yeah, it's more of a like moral thing to them, pretty much. Again, that's my experience. or I would say my viewpoint, not everyone else's, but it's just a moral thing because you can help kids, but it's happening adults here in the U.S. where the problem is as well inside of your church as well. It's going to become an issue or a debate, pretty much.
And Sanjay, if you don't mind, I thought about that, Reverend Austin, when you were talking about mean spiritedness, and I agree that there are perhaps people who don't operate in the spirit of meanness, but there really is in this case this kind of self-righteous mean spiritedness that that immediately connects HIV/AIDS and adults to sin.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if it's presented as this opportunity for redemption for you, and so that to me is a part of the really kind of purposeful mean spiritedness.
Well, I think it's also interesting when you bring up morals and you say that people may not want to deal with the conversation because they think about being morally responsible to children and not necessarily so to adults. But you think about how we associate sin, because I know several churches where the pastors themselves are adulterers, the pastors themselves are pedophiles, the pastors themselves are ones who have committed sexual assaults against other people. And so for you to decide that, people living with HIV are somehow immoral in the face of all of the other immorality that's happening in your space, in your context, how is it that we decide that this is the one that we want to name and this is the one that we want to stigmatize when we know that all of these other behaviors are happening in front of us? And so when Cornelius asks us to talk about the action behind us, behind the conversation, I'm looking at, I know Ryan as a pastor, I know Ellen as a pastor, I know Danny as a pastor, I know Tony as a pastor, I know Harold is one who preaches in churches. Like, are you willing to have these kinds of conversations, not just that name the issues, but that challenges the church to move beyond what we say into actually what we need to do on behalf of the community? Are you willing to move the church? And I'm not talking about your particular context, because I know that you all are preaching and you all are preaching justice, Jesus as justice. But when we talk about the CME church, when we talk about the United Methodist Church, when we talk about the broader context of the church, how far are we willing to go to push them into action? Are we willing to do that work on a systemic level?
Well, I think that work has to be done. And just listening to everybody, and we'll talk about whether you talk at morality, you talk about sin, that's something that's built in to the church. And if you're not willing to push the church past that, then basically, as they said, you're just preaching to the choir. We have to get to that point, because I think one of the biggest things that happens, especially in the Black church, when you start talking about HIV, and especially with adults, in order for that, in order to get the church to move, they have to also accept that, hey, here are people with a need. Here are people that have this need from us that we need to address. And most Black churches, they don't want to address that need, because then you have to accept that whatever that need is, it goes along with the problem. And so, and not to say that, not to say HIV in that context, but if you're going to move the church, if you're going to move through this system, you have to be able to get the church as a collective to understand it's our responsibility to take care of not only the young, the adults, the children, but all of it, and to change the mindset. But that tradition that's standing there, that wall of tradition, principalities, whatever you want to call it, that wall is so thick, that wall is so deep that you beating at it. And how hard are you willing to beat at it? How hard are you willing to take a jackhammer to it?
Well, that's my question. Like, what steps are we willing to take beyond those of us who will actually preach a message? I think it's very important that we preach a message. Don't get me wrong. I think that is very important to say from the pulpit, to name the issues and to wrestle with the issues, but then to also figure out how do we move um, beyond doing that and letting that be all that we offer to the church. So I was just posing that question to those of us who are in that context and wondering how we feel about it. I see you, Sanjay. Go ahead.
Well, like for me, of course, I'm not like I'm not a ordained minister or bishop, whatever pastors. I'm not in that, But far as well, I don't want to discourage anyone. I'm just speaking my piece only in regards to coming from a faith-based organization. Um, I have lost faith for the church to actually speak out in regards into that. Not my faith in God, only in the church or the people inside the church, basically. I would say that, not in God. Is because it's a very, you could say it's a very strong code in with them far as, their mindset, their generational mindset towards it has been just like embedded, basically, pretty much. So me not being involved in church, of course, I know certain churches have great programs for children and help needs for those who need to pay their bills, which is great. People need that. But before this particular conversation and being welcoming and, even if they, let's say they do decide to bring up this subject far as help, I wonder how that help will be presented, the mindset of the person that's presenting help, because you can't be hostile. You need to check yourself from, maybe your view towards, it could be a gay man that you are, or a same gender loving man, black man in particular, helping them in this need. And so how are you going to be very sensitive and knowledgeable in regards to that? So, it would be nice if, particularly I would say in the black church would be progressive in that area, but I lost faith in the people in our leadership to speak out about it pretty much in a very progressive, educated concept.
And there are different ways that I think that we can speak out. Sometimes I think that our actions will speak louder than our words. So even if there are people who are not able to speak from a pulpit, when we look at the plan that the former President Trump laid out for us in his a plan for America, ending the HIV epidemic, a plan for America, that's what he calls it. And when we talk about the money that he wants to bring forth from a federal level, it's the majority of that money is going to be spent on medical interventions. Right? Like, so now we see more and more, I don't know, maybe you are, I'm seeing them more and more commercials about how you can take one pill once a day. Like, so they're better medications, they're more durable medications that are coming out. So this push to make sure that we are attacking this epidemic from the medical perspective is we see that happening on a larger scale. But when we think about people who are living with HIV, they need more than just medication. Do I need medication? Yes. But the disparities that we face in the healthcare industry alone keep us from other aspects of life that could support us suppressing the viral loads of people living with HIV. For example, we need stable housing. Right? People need food. People need transportation. People need employment. Like, all of these supportive services would bode if we focus attention and money there, then that would help to end the epidemic. So some people think, well, all you need is a drug. No, we need more than just that. And so if the church were willing to say, or if communities were willing to say, I might not be preaching this pulpit, but I'm offering a way for you to get housed. I'm offering a way for us to end food deserts and food apartheid. Like, those are other ways that we can show that we are willing to help in this epidemic. And I'm not sure that we're having that broader conversation. And if we are, then you all help me see where do you see those conversations happening?
I'm I'm working right now on expanding a program that we've had going, well, I can tell you, when Ellen and I met the other day, we were at a grant writing workshop, and that's what I'm doing, is looking for some money to expand what we're doing. But it's very much what you're talking about here. We do a lot of feeding of hungry people, and we've expanded it recently to actually give people a sack lunch during the week, a time that, not everybody can go to the stew pot and that sort of thing. And we're seeing a lot of people with a lot of medical conditions, maybe not just HIV/AIDS, but we're seeing so many of them that are in need of food, that are in need of transportation. Whenever we can afford it, we give them bus passes so that they can get to where they need to be. And then, of course, what kind of church is not going to offer counseling to people when they need help? Sometimes it's just standing there listening to somebody on the steps outside the church. So, it's this whole stigma thing that has stopped so many churches from doing anything and going forward. Don't be afraid to mention it. Don't be afraid to tap into resources so that even if it's just offering education. If I had to, I could call Cornelius and say, help me get somebody around here for testing on this day. And he would move heaven and earth to do it, well, reasonably. But, just be there. Just be the damn church. There's so much involved in politics and everything else that we forget what we're here for.
Yeah, and I think that yes, Harold, let's just be the church. It sounds so simple, but it's not. You said, what church would?
Not at all.
You said, what church wouldn't offer counseling to somebody? And I would say several of the churches throughout Arkansas would not offer counseling to a person, because I think Ryan said it, we've assigned people who are living with HIV to be sinners. And then even though we say that the church is supposed to be a refuge, a place for sinners, instead what we do is judge you as sinner and then decide that we can't associate with you because we too holy to be around you sinners. And so we do not create the spaces for folks to be counseled or to be heard or to be seen or to be respected. And that's part of our problem, and why I wanted to have this conversation. So what do we do about that? We got to break down some of this stuff.
Yeah, when I say the church, I mean the church, meaning we need to be striving to be who we're supposed to be. And then these problems take care of themselves.
Deidre, you on mute.
Oh, Deidre on mute.
I've been trying to mute Deidre for years.
It's not gonna work.
I know.
Listen, as the resident atheist sitting here listening to this, I don't know when there was a time where the church was doing any of this. Okay. As far as wraparound services, I don't remember that. It's a pick and choose thing. I remember Denise talking about approaching one of the larger churches that actually would have had the funds to put a grocery store in a food desert. Nada. Okay. If they don't want to help with food, do you really think that they want to help with something that's connected to sex? You gotta be crazy. Okay, you got to be crazy. And you also mentioned about how much that the majority of the money for the ending the epidemic was supposed to go to the medical methods to get things out. And I think that they're doing a fantastic job. You can't even watch TV without an HIV commercial hardly on now. Okay. But when Dr. what was his name? Dr. something came to Arkansas, he also said that this work was supposed to be done at a community level. Okay. We were one of the few states that actually got funding for this. At no point has that happened. At no point. And the money came. And it's probably still coming. Okay. How about the church saying stuff? Okay. Showing up to these meetings at the health department and saying something in unison, okay, that we want you to do this, or calling them out, something like that. But thinking that a church is all of a sudden going to do wraparound services for predominantly gay men, let's throw that out the window. Let's just throw it out the window. It's not going to happen.
Princess.
Hey, I have to totally agree. I think the church has gotten badly off track of its mission. It's gotten tangled up, concerned about moralism more than morals, and even beyond that. Let's just suppose, for the sake of argument, to go down to their level, suppose it was a moral issue, which it's not, but suppose it was. What about the story of Jesus and the prostitute? Did he have any regard for how much sin she didn't or did have, or the Samaritan woman with multiple husbands, all that? The fact that they're sinners shouldn't make a difference. We're all sinners, right?
No. No, we're not. I'm not doing that.
Deidre, what are you saying?
I'm not giving anyone the power to name me anything, especially something as horrific as a sinner that you are born into. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, sir. No. I am not.
So perhaps that might be where the work has to happen with how we see people. We find out a person is living with HIV and then we see them a certain way. Like, that's what I think about labels. When we talk about a person being white, or we talk about a person being gay, or we talk about a person being transgender, or we talk about a person being poor, or we talking about a person being uneducated, whatever the label is, my experience is I give you this label because it's the signal to how I'm supposed to treat you. It's the signal to how I'm supposed to see you. It's the signal to how I'm going to respond to you. Because if we just said, oh, here's a human in front of me, if everybody was just a human in front of me, then would our response be different? I think so. But why I got to be a black human or a poor human or an uneducated human? Like, all of this tells me how. Now, oh, since you uneducated, I can say this. Since you living with HIV, I can do this. And so I think that maybe that's part of the conversation, is asking ourselves the truth about who we see when somebody says HIV. Because I think somebody even said it. You see black and gay and male, but the numbers for heterosexual black women who are living with HIV are on the rise. So we need to be having that conversation. This is not a gay disease. Sanjay, I saw your hand.
And then I want to, regarding no label, is regarding your identity too as well. Even though this may be somewhat off track and maybe not related, but to, you mentioned, how we going to see each other human. That's, I believe, would have been one of the best things in the majority if we were looked and described and treated as humans. We know the history, within this country, the background for our slavery. Our kind was not treated like humans. Then, for so and so long, still have this issue today in certain issues regarding, prison and lawmaking and policing and stuff of that matter. But regarding in the church itself, I would say certain women and then, black gay men were not looked as human, just a subgroup, just looked down on, basically. And that affected us to where we still have to find our identity and heal from that, basically, in a sense. So, we still have to, I'm still, as an almost 30-year-old, in the next 2 months, becoming more aware of myself that I am a human being.
I get what you guys are saying, but for me, I don't give a damn. I want you to see me as black. I want you to see me as gay. I don't give a damn because I'm coming as my whole self, and I should be able to come as my whole self. And you should be able to say, this is a black gay man and they need a resource, because the church, and particularly the black church, they do not mind using black gay men for for the resources as far as the choir, as far as the praise team, as far as the
Man.
ministers of music. And that's where it goes back to that resource thing, is that the people who are disproportionately affected by HIV still regard the church as a huge resource to them, yet the church has failed to be a resource to them.
So why do we continue to regard the church as a resource when we see that they are not, it is not the resource? So why do we continue to expect it to be something that it is not? And why do we position ourselves to continue to be turned away, stigmatized, dehumanized by the church, when there are different ways that we can commune together, even as holy, even as sacred? We can do that without the church, I would think.
See, for me,
I would say,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would say for me, personally, I'm not in the church, I would say, anymore, far as yet. Again, it's best for me at this point to have a relationship with God on my, I would say, own pretty much. But I believe regarding the church, I think the church had to suffer as well, especially during the pandemic. The doors are closed. They had to find a different way of outreach, basically. How to keep their saints intact and safe if they actually cared about this. Some didn't, but most did. They found different ways to streaming and all this stuff, and figured out that, hey, a person does not have to physically be in the church no more to serve God, or how they decide to. But far as our outreach, honestly, I don't see it. If y'all see it, let me know. Let me be part of it, just to see it, pretty much. But the church, what we're seeing people going to the church and referring back to it as a source to, for help regarding this particular issue itself. And I don't see it happening, or people doing it. But like far as outreach like this, like far as doing streaming, a platform, or going to the Capitol, speaking with the lawmakers, there's different things that matter. I think people have been burned by the church too many times to where they're just in a dead cycle, basically, pretty much. They're not looking for the church help regarding, I would say, this particular issue. Of course, there are people in this church are suffering in silence because, that's their identity, or what they believe, or, feel safe in church or that environment, due to whatever reasons that may be. But I don't see people actually going to the church for this particular issue.
Kevin, were you going to say something?
No, I just think, and I'm going to put this back on the community. I feel like we're okay with being tolerated. And that's with anything. We go into spaces, we go into different spaces, we go into the church, we go into predominantly straight communities, and then we are literally there, and somebody says something and we're not standing our ground on a lot of things. I feel like the community actually should be like, listen, I'm a Black gay man in your church and I'm living with HIV. And I need counseling, or I need this, or I need that, right? But they won't do it because, again, like we always said, that it's just not it's very taboo, because you have to also talk about sex, and you also have to talk about same-sex things. And so you have to talk about these things that people in the church usually sweep under the rug. They sweep under the rug when these priests are molesting these children. It's swept under the rug, and those things need to be talked about.
I think that one of the go ahead, Deidre. I hear you. I see you.
I would kind of want to know why the church, or there's been this faith-based intervention in public health in the first place. Okay, why not in sports? Okay, more people follow sports than Jesus. Okay, so why did they do it? Pardon me?
Not in the South.
No, they will pay $100 for a ticket. They're not going to put $100 in church. Okay, it's not going to happen. So I'm kind of wondering why. Okay, is it because of historical affect or effect? Mm-hmm.
No, I really think that Harold is onto something, because one of the things when we begin to talk about our country geographically and we talk about the South, one of the things that we talk about the South being most known for is its religious conservatism. Right? And so we believe that in order for us to move issues, we need to engage faith leaders because they are the ones who have the ear of the community. And because the community, because most of the people, I think, I can't remember the numbers now, but back when I was doing this work on a more concentrated level, I think it was like 90% of people in Arkansas consider themselves to be not only faithful, but Christian. And so they say, well, then this must be an arm. This must be some leverage that we can use in order to get messages across, to educate people, to move people. We need the church to help us with all of these efforts. And that is what we always do. Ryan, am I telling you, work in movement spaces? The first thing we say is we need to get some faith people in here.
Yeah, I mean, I think churches have, and I agree, with your point writ large. But I also think that churches have some sort of outmoded moral influence that is a place where folks kind of center their, put the divisions between right and wrong. I mean, we don't expect that of the basketball team or the football team or anything like that. But I think people, for what it's worth, and it's not worth a whole lot, unfortunately, that the churches for them are these moral spaces. But I was also thinking too, one of the faults of the church, particularly the leadership, is not admitting. I was going to say not understanding, but maybe that's it. But just not admitting how ill-equipped it is to even do these things. I'm often concerned about pastors doing marital counseling because I don't know a single pastor who's qualified to do marital counseling. And the pitiful part is that there are resources. There is a long-running initiative about the Black church and HIV/AIDS epidemic that the NAACP has that is full of equipment, full of liturgical equipment, full of things for sermons, full of ways to organize these captive audiences that people have every Sunday. Because I hear people talk about the messages that the pastor preached, and bless it, a lot of it is folks get preached happy and get confirmed or get affirmed on who they are and what God wants them to have, and then they go home satisfied. And I imagine if that same amount of energy were put into the various issues, particularly this one, because this is what we're talking about today, because and since we're not single issue people, but if we really talked about these things from a position of information, from a position seeking the kind of information that's necessary to get across America, because it's one thing to say we're concerned as a congregation about the HIV/AIDS epidemic and to not know what it looks like within your own community, to not bring folks who are informed, folks who are living with HIV/AIDS, and not even connect with people. And so, it's a larger ignorance. And I think to Reverend Austin's earlier point, it's a larger ignorance that is couched in the idea that churches know what they're supposed to be doing in general.
Yeah. Okay. We said 40 years of this ease, right? Of that, 30 of them at least, I can tell you that they've had faith-based initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot name a one that was successful. Okay. I think you're just shooting straws. It's not going to have an effect here because of that moral context that is with it. It's just not. Okay. And I just believe that there has to be another way. There has to be another platform, institute, or something other than the church. You're beating a dead horse.
Yeah, and sometimes churches do a bit of an in run on health issues as well. I mean, Harmony Health Clinic here in Little Rock would not exist without the faith community. It launched it, it raised the funds, it birthed it, it supports it, You know, same thing with out at Oak Forest United Methodist. There's a clinic out there that does vision, hearing, dental, medical, that has a strong outreach to the Hispanic community. So, you know, why can't we get a bunch of churches together and launch that type of thing? I don't think an individual church could afford to do that anymore. I'm sitting writing grants trying to figure out how to give sack lunches to, you know, working poor as they come to our door during the week. You know, writing grants, having to do that for it because our congregation just can't afford it. So
I think there are plenty that could. I think there are plenty that
right
could.
now that can. In
I know
in
some
Little Rock.
churches right now, got $5 million building plans.
They
I know churches right now who, when around 1 o'clock, their lot empties of luxury cars, and so I think, you know, the inability to do it. You know, and I don't begrudge folks their stuff. I'm just saying the resources are there. You know, I see some of the facilities of some of these churches, and not only could they be doing it, you know, they could serve as a model, and you know, and that's why, you know, I hear your point, Deidre, because at a certain time, you know, we have to dispense with, we can't work folks into good sense, you know,
right.
30 years and then 40 plus. I understand that, but you know, I also just want to say the resources are there, the will is not. You know, the harvest is plentiful, the laborers then ran off.
Right. Those moneyed churches are not going to be the ones that support it. They're going to be churches like mine that has to check the cushions in the sofa to pay the electric bill. You know, that's why I'm talking about working together with people. You're not going to get people to sign off on that from those big fancy churches with the money from those mega churches, because it's just not going to happen. Now, maybe once they see when it works, they might decide to sign on. So it's the people that want to do the more pure work that would have to launch this type of initiative.
Yeah. Ellen, I see you trying to jump in. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
No, I actually remember it was a church here in North Little Rock that's a pretty prominent church, and they brought a gospel artist here for World AIDS Day. And she got on stage, she sung, they hooping and hollering, and then she had a message about how the church shunned her for being a single mother, how even the contest that she was a part of kind of shunned her because she was a single mother, and they didn't know if she could represent her. So represent the kind of the way we see things, but also too, we think about Fantasia Barrino from American standpoint. America Idol didn't want her because she was a single mother and a dropout. So it's also a church issue, but it's also an American issue. And I feel like I'm with Deidre that it needs to be at a community level. The church is not going to be, because those who are disproportionately affected by HIV are the ones who the church literally demonizes. It's just not, it's very counterproductive at times.
But yeah, but they're the same ones that go to church and support the church. The very same people who are black and gay, living with HIV, the same gender loving. You go, you tithe, you shout, you do all of that to a church who does not see you as human. So when you say, Kevin, part of the problem is us, we allow people sometimes to harm us. We allow them to treat us less than human. We have to check ourselves.
And that's what I said about that tolerant thing. You know, we want to be tolerated, but we also want to be accepted. And we feel like that tolerance is a level of acceptance. If I can come into this church and you not just blatantly kick me out, but as long as I'm doing something, I'm being tolerated and I'm okay right here in this space. But we don't talk about the real deep-seated issues within, you know what I mean, in our communities and within the church.
Absolutely.
Like the psychosis that the church causes.
Oh, yeah. It's Stockholm Syndrome. We've
There
been abused by it so long, we've fallen in love with it.
Ellen, I see you trying to get in there. You've been trying to get in there. I see you.
Sorry, we'll be quiet.
No, I see you, Ellen. You want to say something?
I just have a here's my thought in response to a little of the many powerful things that have been shared here. One of which is, as my brother Ryan has said, you know, the church is not going to be the expert in everything. And too often, I think one of the issues is the church feeling like we've got the expectation that the church is all kinds of resources, excluding other places. That the church has the expertise, the know-how, the already arrived, the wisdom about it, the whatever, which each of those things, that is not true to any level of completion. And I think, to me, it goes back to relationships and being a part of a bigger community. I think the church is at its best when it understands it is a part of a team and a part of relationships that reach beyond its walls. Let's just open the doors. I mean, so to me, the main charge to the church that needs a whole lot of growth and improvement is how we see each other. Sawubona. I mean, the church can't be an expert, but the church and people of the church, people praying for the church. I don't know quite how to say it, but my prayer for me and my part in the church and in the community and as a part of all the big thing that we're all a part of is that I can grow to see and believe other humans and maybe understand myself some better then and what I'm supposed to be about. But I think that's where we just got to spend time with each other and hear the stories and understand more clearly, and then make referrals to the places where there is strength and resource and be referred to where we can step that up. And I don't have the particulars. I think the barriers are certainly the stigma. Again, that goes back to seeing. And the very word stigma is about the eye, right? Stigmatism. And being overwhelmed, knowing where on earth to start. But the biggest thing is being detached from one another, because altogether we can see the bigger picture. So I need you, and may I be there in the ways that you need me. That's all I know.
I think that the charge to the church is because to me, I think I want to push back just a little, Ellen, because it sounds a little bit like it's an individual thing. Like as the chaplain, as a reverend, as these are the things that we want to do. This is what we want to see. This is how we want to make sure that we lead our congregation. And so it becomes this kind of individual effort that we are pushing. And so we have those churches that are reconciling churches. We have those churches those are individual churches. But what I think I would like, if I were going to pray for the church, it would be that the church would rise up and see its power rather than be complicit in the system. Because when you're talking to me about sack lunches, do I think people need to be fed? Yes. But I think that's a Band-Aid. Like, I think the church needs to be fighting hunger, right? The church needs to be fighting like, I don't need to be giving you I got to do that until we get something else. Yes. But what is our goal for dismantling? Where is our goal for divesting? Where is our goal? So I mean, because we can live from now until henceforth and forevermore and be feeding people if we don't fight poverty, if we don't fight housing, if we don't fight lack of access to health care. And sometimes I feel like the church says, oh, well, this is the way of the world. What would Jesus do? Jesus would show up with a sack lunch. And I feel like now Jesus would show up and tear it down. And so where is our tear it downness? And I think that we have lost that on some level. I'm going to get Princess in here because Princess wants to respond to something that has been said. So I want to give them an opportunity to do that. And we've got about 15 more minutes. So we're going to be thinking about your final comments for tonight's conversation. Princess, you're here.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to touch on was that tolerance versus acceptance. And I've got a good personal example of that. I went with one of my partners to the church they grew up in. And it's a non-denominational, you're pretty much standard conservative rock and roll Jesus church. Everyone was really friendly, and that was refreshing, because I expected as a trans woman, especially a non-passing trans woman, to walk into church and get judged, So I think that because we expect that, when we don't get that, when we actually get a little tolerance, that maybe it's easy for us to over enthusiastically see that as acceptance, when really it's just they're tolerated. Because the more I talked to the preacher, as nice as he was, I could tell he didn't accept me for who I was. The more I, picked away at him. Now let's see. Someone also mentioned all the money that's being spent. Some of these churches have put all this money into this is just part and parcel of the church being so misguided. We're playing church. We're forgetting what the church is actually all about. I'm not a Methodist, but I very much embrace the Wesleyan concept of the social gospel, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. And we do have a lot of power. The church has an amazing amount of power. Look how much traction against queer people is out there just because of churches that are so caught up in their moralism that they fail to see what actual morality is and what actual Christianity is.
I think that speaks to what I know some of you all have said this. I think it was you, Kevin, talking about the fact that we need mental health services so that we can recognize our own worth and our own value, so that we are not willing to embrace tolerance as something that's a prize that we've received. And it's because, as Princess said, I expected you to see me as nothing. So for you not to see me as nothing, now I'm all excited and I'm ready to give myself over to the space, when really that on its face is not enough to just be tolerated. So I think that speaks to all the mental health services that we need on all different levels of our identities. As we try to live together into this space where Ellen says, I see you and I want you to see me and be of help, and let us be of help to each other. So we've got about 15 more minutes, and I want to make sure that I'm letting you out on time. But if you all have something to say that we didn't, like we should have been, Denise, you should have said this. We should have been talking about this. Why didn't you ask this question? I wanted to answer that question. If you have some parting remarks that you want to make, I want to give you an opportunity to do that right now.
Okay, it's not a rabbit hole I want to go down, but I would like to clarify a little bit what I meant by sinners. I think that word is so loaded, and people have the concept of the sinners in the hand of an angry God. I don't take that view of it. I'm what you call a progressive Christian. Like, I'm a radical Christian. I don't have a judgmental attitude. I just see that as a way of saying that we're all imperfect. Every one of us makes mistakes. That's all that word really means to me. It doesn't mean like we're all born into this original sin, and we're all born into God just, rubbing his hands together, waiting to fry us if we don't do the right thing. It's just a way of embracing our human imperfection. Because the whole point of grace is, we're sinners. God doesn't care. That's the whole point.
Okay. Anyone else want to have some parting remarks, or you want to ask a question that we should have asked? I'm gonna bring Princess back on. I'm gonna say sing because I haven't seen. Anyone else?
Well, I think
I've enjoyed listening to all of the comments and everything.
I want to say that we're sitting and we're almost faulting the church. And I think if we look historically at what has gone on, both in the 18th century and the 19th century during what was called the Great Awakenings, there's a huge religious movement going on. However, the important thing that comes out of that is most of the change that happens in society happened coming out of the church. So I think if we look at the church as an agent of change and an agent to help push change along, it's going to take, and the only thing that it takes, it doesn't cost any money. The only thing that it takes is to be brave and to say the right thing. So actions do speak louder than words. If you say, I'm going to support the gay community, the HIV community, however you want to phrase it, the young Black men, you know, since that's the group where everything is growing the fastest, do it, but put your money where your mouth is, and not even just your money. You can hold space for someone. You can do this, and that's always been my problem with the church. They talk real big, and they don't necessarily follow through. So, you know, if we can be the people who poke these faith groups with a sharp stick and get them to follow through, I think we can actually become an agent of social change, and exactly the kind of change that we need.
Cornelius, I think you were saying something to us, and I think you froze for a minute, and we weren't sure if you were finished. And then Harold started talking. Did you get your statement out? Is he still frozen? Can y'all see him?
Yeah.
He's looking frozen.
He took himself off mute. Can you hear us, Cornelius?
Yeah. No. I can hear.
Did you finish your statement earlier?
Can you not hear me?
It's spotty.
Okay. I was trying to say something, but I think we're. Can you? No. No.
Try now.
Back? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes. All right, great. Well, just real quickly, I mean, again, I appreciate all the conversations that I've heard this evening, and I think my parting comments are that with this conversation, we're going to be moving forward with some more action, and we're going to be talking about this on our broadcast this Friday, where we're going to outline and share some interesting programming that we're going to be doing. And I think one of the most interesting ones that we're going to be doing and collaborating with another major partner is we're going to be exploring using the universal benefit income to receive an income each month to be in care. And so we are really excited about that partnership and the possibilities there. So, say, putting
I think what Cornelius is saying is that we need to be putting action to our words. And one of the ways that they're going to be putting actions to their words is to have people receive some money in order to be linked to care. And we're going to pay people to be linked to care because we know that if people are linked to care, they go to the doctor and they are compliant with their meds, then we can now monitor those viral loads so that we can get them suppressed. Once they are suppressed, it is highly unlikely for you to be able to transmit HIV during sexual intercourse. And so that's when we go back to talking about U equals U. Undetectable means untransmittable, and that is the campaign which we are under. So I think that that's what I hear Cornelius saying to us, is that we don't want to just be talkers, but we want to be doers of the word as well, and not the Jesus word, but the community word that says we've got to fight these systems, and we can't just depend on the church, because as Ellen said, the church ain't the everything and the end all and the be all, and we need to understand that. And so how do we as a community activate our words so that people actually get the help that they need? And so I just wanted to summarize that, because I really believe that's what Cornelius was saying to us. Anybody else? We've got about 7 more minutes.
Well, I just want to say this, and I appreciate being a part of the conversation. Just listening is just listening to some of the conversation is it's just been awesome to me. But the one thing that I kept hearing over and over is the word, the church, the church, the church. Now that word, everybody has a different opinion of what that is. Some people think it's some building over across the street or whatever. But as I'm listening to everybody, I'm looking at the church. Everybody in this conversation, we are the church. Whether you think so or not, whether you agree with it or not, or whether you look at it or not, because the church is nothing but individuals in community moving, trying to get something done. That's what it is. We bring religion and all these other things into it, but in reality, we are the ones that we said that we're trying to move. If we said that we're trying to move as collective, we're trying to get people more aware of what's going on with HIV. We're trying to get people more aware of affordable housing and medication and all these things. Well, we are the community. We are the ones that have to push that. Now, whatever your beliefs, that's the thing that causes all the problems. If you throw away the beliefs and said, let us work together as human beings, let us work together to do things, and you start as an individual coming together as a community and get it done. And that's what I believe. I believe that we, and I believe that's why we're having this conversation, that we can do something. We can change some things. We can change minds. We can get the resources. And if we do it, isn't that church?
Not if you got to add Jesus in it. So, no.
That's what I mean. Once you bring in the belief, then now you have thrown the community away. Why do you have to have the belief? Let's come together.
That's only if you let your belief be oppositional. That's the thing. Your beliefs don't have to be an oppositional thing. If you're really morally focused, then you're concerned about getting stuff done. Like I said, the social gospel, the actual realistic, everyday, right here, right now, the kingdom of heaven is now gospel. For example, the Satanic Temple has the exact same ethics as Christianity if you read what they're doing. So I would consider them allies in social change, even if they do have a different philosophy.
Anybody else want to say something before we go? We got about 5 minutes.
I just think that the church can be a resource, right? It can be a resource, not the resource. Because until pastors can say, until I can say to you and I can go and get counseling, you can direct me to an actual mental health counselor that can actually help me with triggers and coping with everyday life, then I don't necessarily will consider you as a resource. Do you get what I'm saying? You have to have other people to be a counselor. You have to have other means of resources to say, I don't know all the answers, but I have somebody who may be able to help you with this.
I agree. So, can I just ask this one question?
Hold on just a minute, Tony, because you just said something and Ellen is trying to get in. So just hold on just a minute. Let me make sure we make the space for everybody.
Just real quick, I appreciated the word power earlier, and thank you for bringing that. And I think we find our power when we find how we can work together on this. And that may be a little different at each moment along the journey. So why we have to keep listening and learning and being willing to move.
Anyone else before we go back to Tony have some words, some parting words or questions or charges?
We keep talking the church. And for years and years, I have said that my atheist and free-thinker friends probably get the social gospel better than most church people because they aren't tied up in all the trappings and all the theology.
I think that's what Tony is trying to say about religion. Tony, okay, you got about 2 minutes because I need to say something before we go.
I don't need 2 minutes. I just want to respond to something Kevin said about the resources, and I just believe that if we concentrated on, and I know it's been said in a lot of different ways, we just concentrated on the work and not everything else. I think those resources that's needed for those who are in need can be taken care of.
Okay, is Ryan still there? Can you come on? Ryan, if you're still there, can you come on camera? I want us to take a picture. I want everybody to smile so I can take your picture on your screen before we go. Ryan, can you come on back on camera real quick? Yeah, smile. Come on, I need everybody to smile. Y'all ready? 1, 2, look up. 1, 2, 3. Yay! Gotcha. Thank you all so much for this conversation. As Cornelia said, this is part of a broader, this is part of the work, but this is just one step along the journey to doing the work. So I'm going to be training on all of these. I'm going to be training people locally around these issues. And this conversation, bits and pieces of it, will be used to continue to move people forward around offering the resources that people need. And in this particular context, we're talking about people who are living with HIV. So thank you all so much for joining us. I really appreciate you. And of course, I will be extending other invitations to you as we go along. And I hope you will say yes. Bye.
Bye.